Hi, it's Ron Coleman. You know, I'm not an expert on the law involving the military, much less military law, but I do think I have a pretty good command of the English language. Martial law is rule by the military. People who say that we're already under martial law because we're under coercion by the government, with respect to COVID, for example, that's not martial law. That might be a police state, but it's not martial law. It's a very, very big difference. Similarly, the fact that the military is involved in a particular activity or a mission isn't an invocation or an example of martial law. It's just military action. Martial law has to be comprehensive for a given jurisdiction. It has to be control and rule by the military alone. We don't have martial law. We've never been under martial law, except in connection with the Civil War 150 years ago. With God's help, we won't go under martial law again. It's not something you want. It's not something General Flynn wants. There will not be martial law. Not in this country. It's not necessary. It's going to be okay. Just one. Good morning. You know, I'm seeing a lot of people on Twitter talking about fighting. Gotta fight. This is the time to step up. If you're anonymous on Twitter, and if you're anonymous also in what you're doing to fight, I don't think you should be tweeting that. You know, intimidation and surrender are catchy. I lost 2 jobs, maybe 3, depending how you count it, because I'm standing up for what I and a lot of the people watching this video believe. If you want to fight, at some point you're going to have to put your name and reputation on the line. It is often painful to see what happens when you do. It often is costly. But although there is a place for anonymity, and there's a time for anonymity, urging people to fight anonymously is urging other people to remain anonymous. The way you develop enthusiasm for a fight is by standing up for it. Everyone has to be Spartacus. That's ultimately the only way this is going to happen. You've got to put yourself on the line. Or all the talk about 1776, all the talk about refreshing the blood of the tree of liberty with tyrants is just that. It's just talk. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, the chapters of the Fathers, says 2 different things about the state. One is that if it weren't for government, every man would eat his neighbor alive. We need government. The other one is, don't get too close to the government. There are probably many ways to reconcile these 2 statements. They're not necessarily contradictions at all. We need to have government, but we also need not to get too close to government. I want to suggest that one way of learning this seeming contradiction or possible contradiction is that there are also times in the history of a government when it serves its purpose, and times when it is more dangerous than it is helpful. Those of us who grew up in a time of relative stability, when we thought government was legitimate and beneficial on the whole, and that if there was some scandal, if there was some cheating, that it was still doing more good than harm, have to come to terms with the possibility that we may be on the other side now. And maybe that not only is government something that we should not get too close to, it may be causing us to eat each other alive. The serious question for our moment, to me, the moral question is, does the left realize how oppressive and dehumanizing its policy preferences are? Or is it, do they just don't care? Are they just blinded by their ideological preferences? Is it possible to be an educated, sensible person at all and not realize, for example, how dehumanizing it is to wear masks in so many situations where there's no rational, scientific reason for doing so? How damaging it is to the social fabric to separate people from their work, from their communities, from the places they shop and gather for such a long period of time. Do they not realize? Do they just not account for? Or do they know what it means to be unemployed? Because your business was shut down, because people can't shop, while much larger businesses are allowed to be open, but you can't afford to shop there. Is it possible to be people who claim to be educated and smarter than their adversaries and not know this? Sort of a gray day here in northern New Jersey. Started out with a little bit of a burst of sunlight, but I think the clouds have predominated. You know, gray predominates if you see the world as monochrome. Certainly if you see the world as black and white, black is almost certainly going to predominate, because things are either wins or losses, victories or folding, winning or losing. Life is almost never like that. It's not reality. Reality is overwhelmingly shades of gray. It's the same thing in politics. Maybe the fact that we have two political parties makes it seem like everything that happens in politics is a win for one or a loss for the other. It's not like that. It's not even like that for one individual political career. And it's not like that for any particular political moment or decision, except perhaps an election. We have got to learn to appreciate the gray, even the darker, harsher gray, because there is obviously light, and there is obviously sun illuminating the clouds behind the gray. We need to cheer up a little bit. I take these do these videos, I don't know how you want to put it, on my morning drive from Clifton, New Jersey to nearby Montclair, New Jersey. Clifton is a nice little middle-class town. It has a very wide variety of incomes and homes. Montclair is also actually quite broad. There are all kinds of apartments, but there are some homes like you really only see, you know, in very, very few places. Some extraordinarily beautiful homes. It's a very, very pretty town, and a very nice place to have an office. One of the things, though, that amuses me, and I only started driving to Montclair when I joined the Dillon law firm and set up my office there, was realizing, and that was in August, which was already shortly before the election, all the Black Lives Matter signs that I would see in front of houses that were easily worth $3, $4, $5 million or more. So what, is that hypocritical? Is it hypocritical to be extremely well off but still be down with the revolution? The answer is no, it's not. You can absolutely be interested in what you purport to be a sort of grassroots movement for whatever BLM stands for. Still, it's kind of funny to me, though, you know. This morning, for some reason, I decided to use my GPS to help me get to my office. I think I was thinking I was running a little bit late. Maybe the GPS would help me figure out a way to get to the office.
In half a mile, the destination is on your right, 8 Hillside Avenue.
Thank you. Which would be a little bit faster to make up for my lost time because of my delay. And I realized it did do that. And it took me on a route that I had never, not only had I never contemplated using that route to get to my office on Hillside Avenue, I didn't even know there was such a route. I didn't even know that that these streets existed. Not only did I get to work faster than I otherwise would have under the circumstances, but I came to understand more about where I was going and how I might get there. It's kind of funny, right? That things can work out that way. And yet, we really never learn the lesson. We don't. We're so comfortable with routes and streets and even destinations that we know. Even to the extent that we will waste time and go down what actually turn out to be dead ends for no reason.